So, Chapter 1, Section 3, Classification of Numbers. This starts with your green foldable, please. Green foldable. Luca, green foldable, please. Classifying numbers. We're going to start with our smallest category of numbers, which is our natural numbers. Does anybody remember the other name for our natural numbers category? What is the other name for this?
Counting numbers.
Counting numbers, exactly. So our natural numbers are also known as counting numbers. And when we count, what number do we generally start with?
1.
And then we continue with 2, 3, 4, and we continue on in that process, correct? What's that? Write it on the inside of your green foldable, please. There's one difference between our natural numbers and our whole numbers. What is the one difference between a natural number and a whole number, Drew? A whole number starts with 0. That's the only difference. So 0, 1, 2. Oftentimes in directions they'll say, give a whole number for that answer. That means give a number like 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, continuing in that progression. Now we get to expand it a little bit more. What do integers have?
Negative.
Do you remember what the definition for an integer is?
Whole numbers are opposite.
Very good. Whole numbers and their opposites. This could be a -4, a -3, a -2. Could be a +4. So remember, as we're going through these, natural numbers are still considered whole numbers. Whole numbers are still considered integers. Do you remember the definition for a rational number? Say that louder. What? Right. Rational numbers can be written as a fraction. Can be written as a fraction. Can we also have negative fractions in there? Sure, it could be. So rational numbers means it can be written as a fraction. Do you remember what all numbers are, or real numbers are? I just kind of gave it away, didn't I? Your last one is, in our case, it's going to be all numbers that we are concerned about in 8th grade. Real number is all numbers right now. At the top of the first page that you glued in, fill in the word irrational. An irrational number is a number that cannot be written as a fraction. That prefix of IR means not rational, which means it cannot be a fraction. So if rational means fraction, irrational means not a fraction. In an irrational number, these are going to be numbers like pi, for example, 3.14159, and go on forever and ever and ever. This could be numbers like the square root of 2 or the square root of 5. Those numbers are decimals that go on forever and ever and ever, never repeating. So if I give you a number like the number 2, what's the first category that the number 2 would fit into?
Real.
It's a real number. Now, if it's a real number, we have to decide, is it a rational number or is it an irrational number? Number 2 is a rational number, right? Is it also an integer? Yes, it is. Is it also a whole number?
Yeah.
Yes, it is. Is it also a natural number?
Yeah.
Yes, it is. So if I have to classify a number 2, for example, it's going to fit in real, rational, integer, whole, natural. The only one it does not fit into is irrational. What about a number like 5/8? What's the first category we have to start with?
Real.
It is real. Is 5/8 rational? Can it be written as a fraction?
Yeah.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, it is a rational number already, right? It's already written as a fraction. Can fractions go into the integer box? No, it cannot. So we say it's real, rational in a case like that. All right, let's continue with our notes. You are going to be asked to give a counter example. And a counter example is something that proves that something is false. So proving something is false. For example, integers are positive numbers. Well, are all integers positive numbers?
No.
No. Integers we just defined as positive numbers or whole numbers and their opposites. So negative 15 would be a counterexample to that. It's an integer, but it's not positive. Inequality, remember greater than opens to your left, less than opens up to your right hand. Absolute value means a number's distance from what?
0.
Can absolute value ever be negative? No, it cannot. Absolute value is never negative. For example, what is the absolute value of a negative 8? How far from 0 is negative 8? It's 8 units. Distance is never negative. What is the absolute value of 4? 4, it's 4 units away from 0. 1 is 1, 2, 3, 4 leaps away. Absolute value of negative 5 is 5. Again, it is never a negative value. What definition goes here? Numbers that are the same distance from 0 on a number line, such as 5 and negative 5. What do we call those? Numbers that are the same distance from 0, such as 5 and negative 5. Rex?
Integers.
They're both integers, but there's another name for them. What if I said 2 and negative 2? Steve, what are you saying? No. They are opposites of each other. Opposites. So what is the opposite of 14? Negative 14, because it's still 14 units away from 0. What is the opposite of 22? Negative 22. So when you're given opposites, one is a positive value, one is a negative value. State whether each number is real, natural, whole, integer, rational, or irrational. Name all the categories they fit into. So if we're going to start with negative 13, what is the first classification we should give every single one of these numbers? All of these numbers, as far as we are concerned, are real. Now, is negative 13 rational or irrational? Because it has to be one or the other.
Rational.
It is rational. Is it an integer? Yes, it is. Remember, this is my integer number line over here. And it has positive and negative values. So it's a real, rational integer. Do I go any further than an integer?
No.
No, it's not a whole number. Let's do the next one. 3 and 2800ths. What's the first classification it gets? It is also real, rational, or irrational. Is it an integer? It is not. We do not let fractions into the integer box. So it's just real rational for 3 and 2800ths. What about 13 25ths? Real, and what else?
Rational.
Real rational, correct. $24. First classification. Real. Rational or irrational? Rational. Is it an integer? Yes, it is. Anything else? Whole and natural. Good. Real, rational, integer, whole, natural. The next decimal. We know it's real. Rational or irrational? Why irrational? Say that louder, please. You are right, it is irrational, but why? Is it repeating?
Yeah. Never stops.
It never stops, but I don't see anything that repeats. If it repeats, it's actually rational. There's nothing, it's a decimal that goes on forever and never and never, but it doesn't have anything that repeats. That's why it's irrational. Change that to the next one, 0.7 repeating. If it repeats, that is the fraction 7/9. Anytime a number repeats, it is a fraction. There's something that's happening in the division question that keeps repeating itself again and again and again when it was written as a fraction and changed to that decimal. So if 0.7 is repeating decimal, it has to be real, rational. That is real, rational. What is 0 divided by 5?
0.
It's equal to 0. So in its simplest form, this equals 0. I can have 0 pieces of candy divided by 5 people. We all still just get 0 pieces of candy. So 0 is what classification? Real, rational, real, rational, integer,
Whole.
Is it natural too?
No.
No, why?
0.
It starts with 0. Natural numbers do not start with 0, they start with 1. Whole numbers start 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 divided by 0. Can I have 5 pieces of candy divided by 0 people?
No.
Well, they belong to somebody, right? This is a divide by 0 error. If you have your calculator right now, take 5 divided by 0. It doesn't work on your calculator, does it? A lot of times it says divide by 0 error, or it'll say that you have a mistake, or it just says error on your calculator. You can't have 0 as your denominator in a fraction. That does not work. So it does not fit for any of these categories. So you're just going to say it's none in your notes. It does not fit into any of those classifications. Luca, do you have that recorded in your notes?
Mm-hmm.
Continuing on. So now, I want you to think about all of those classifications that we just used. Real numbers, rational or irrational, integer, whole, and natural. When you are given your temperatures, for example, Which set of numbers is the most reasonable for displaying outdoor temperatures? If I'm watching the weather, which set of numbers are they usually giving me on the news for the temperature outside? Is it real, rational, or irrational? Integer numbers, whole numbers, or natural numbers that they usually give me? Not whole numbers. We live in Minnesota.
Integers.
Why integers?
Was this negative?
Yeah. In a couple of months, could the high be a -5 degrees?
Yes.
Absolutely. If I lived in someplace like Mexico, it's probably whole numbers all the time. But not in Minnesota. In Minnesota, our temperatures get recorded using integers. Do they usually tell us that the temperature is a -4.5 degrees?
No.
No, they don't. They use just the -4 or just the -5 degrees. They don't go to a half or a decimal. So let me give you another example. Shoe sizes. What set of category of numbers are your shoe sizes given in? It is not whole or natural. What did you just say, Mason? What about half sizes? I can wear a 10.5. So what category is that? Yeah, say it again. Those are rational numbers. My shoe sizes can be rational. This question's not in your notes, by the way. What about if I'm using a recipe and it asks for how much sugar, it tells me how much sugar I need. Why is that rational? Can I have half of a cup of sugar or a fourth a cup of sugar or 3 3/4 cups of sugar? Those are all rational numbers then. Next one here. Determine whether this statement is true or false. If it is false, give a counterexample. All negative numbers are integers. Is that a true or false statement? All negative numbers are integers.
False.
Okay, why?
Because there could be decimals.
So give me a counterexample. Give me a number that proves that that is a false statement. Grayson, what were you going to say?
A decimal that doesn't have.
Like what? Drew. -3 5/10. That's a negative number, but is that negative number an integer? No, it's not. It's a rational number. So we proved it incorrect just by giving a negative value that proves that that number, or proves that that is false. Write in order from least to greatest. Get your calculators out, please. Let's change these to decimals before putting them in order from least to greatest. So -3/4 is what as a decimal? 75/100 or -75/100. -7/12. Type that one into your calculator. What decimal do we get there?
-0.583 repeated.
Just the 3 repeats?
Yeah.
Okay. How about a -5/8 as a decimal? -5/8 as a decimal. What's that? $625 thousandths. -625 thousandths. Now, we are supposed to put those numbers in order from least to greatest. Can I view these as money?
Yeah.
Okay, so if I look at, this is a -0.75, I've lost 75 cents. That'd be the same thing, right? I've lost almost 58 cents, or I've lost 62.5 cents, almost 63 cents. Which one would you not want to lose? Which one would be losing the most amount of money? Right, so the -3/4 is the negative 75/100ths. That's the one that's the furthest away from 0 and the furthest to the left. Now which one?
Is it the least to greatest?
It is least to greatest.
75 centimeters.
No, it's a negative 75/100ths. It's like you've lost 75/100ths. If it was positive, you're right, it would be the biggest, but not when it's negative, it's the opposite. Now which one? Negative 5/8. Oops. So the largest is actually a negative 7/12 because it's actually the closest to 0 when it's a negative. Remember on these, you have to switch your thinking when they are negatives. Find each absolute value. What does absolute value mean again?
Distance from
The number's distance from 0. So the absolute value of a negative 2 5/10 is what, everybody? 2 5/10. Over to B, absolute value of 7 is 7. Absolute value of 0. 0 is 0 units from 0. And number D, absolute value of 2 is 2. Can absolute value ever be negative? No, it cannot. Distance is never a negative value. Find the opposite. Opposite of negative 2 is a positive 2. Opposite of 14,
Negative 14.
negative 14. Opposite of a negative 3 4/10. Positive 3 4/10, and the opposite of 25 is a negative 25. Does anybody have questions? You are actually going to do a book assignment. You are not